Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
It's working? Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's good. So here we are once again, second Monday of the month, and tonight we're going to have our um, public meeting in English when we discuss Spiritism as we do every other day here or every week, but this time in English, so that we can get more used to some of the words, some of the concepts, not only in at least my mother tongue, which is Portuguese, but also as we know, learn the vocabulary, learn a little bit more about the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of the gospel according to Spiritism, the teachings that we find in Spiritism, but as well in English. So as we do every second Monday of the month, we have the regular study of the gospel according to Spiritism, which here we have one of the covers. This is from the international edition of Edisei, which is the editor of the Spiritist International Council. And tonight we're going to talk about item number 8 of the first chapter of the book, which is the alliance between science and religion. But as we also do every meeting here, we first start with a prayer so we can be more in tune with the good spirits of the center, with the ones who are coordinating our activities from the spiritual realm. And we do this prayer so we can focus a little bit more on what we're going to study. And right after the prayer, we usually read a small passage from a book. And the book that we're reading and studying is Our Daily Bread from Emmanuel and Chico Xavier. And tonight we're going to talk about chapter 78. But before we do this, let's do our initial prayer. So closing our eyes if we want to, if we feel inclined to do so that we can concentrate on the words, on the thoughts, and on the feelings as well. We would like to raise our thoughts to our dear Master Jesus, to our Creator, God, and say to them, dear friends of our souls, here we are once again at our little spot of light to study, to hear, to feel the presence of love in our lives. And we would like to thank you for all the blessings that we have been receiving throughout our days, throughout our lives, for the blessing of being here, incarnated once more, so that we can learn how to love, how to improve, and how to grow, walking always towards helping each other to become happier and happier. We would like to ask that your blessings may reach us, all of us here, the incarnates and the discarnates, so that we all together, with the thoughts directed to your love, we can help this world to become a better place. May your love be with us, not only tonight, but always. So be it. So, tonight I'm going to be alone as well, like I did last time. Well, I mean, alone physically, right? Because I see some people here, and I don't see some people here, right? Because I'm not a medium, so I cannot see the ones who are not incarnated. Tonight would be, like I said last time, Hendrik would be here, but he had another problem at his work, and he couldn't come. So here I am, and you're going to have to keep up with me one more time. So I don't have the book as well as I didn't have it last time, but I have it here physically in the phone, right? And the book is Our Daily Bread, and we are talking about chapter 78. In chapter 78 of the book, Our Daily Bread, which was written once again by Emmanuel in psychographed by Chico Xavier, the title of the chapter is According to the Flesh, according to our body, right? According to the matter. And Emmanuel takes a small piece, the small verse from the letter that Paul wrote to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 13. And Paul wrote, "For if you live according to the flesh, you will die." And Emmanuel makes a comment that's not very common for him to do it this way, but it is nonetheless very, very interesting for us to think about it. So that's what he says. For those who live according to the flesh, that is, according to the lower impulses, the season of earthly struggle is no more than a series of empty events. At every moment, limitation will be an incessant phantom. A mind overwhelmed with negativity will encounter death at every step. For the conscience that has had the misfortune of espousing such dark concepts, human existence will be no more than a sad comedy. Suffering will be seen as a house fit only for despair. The work intended for spiritual purification will be experienced in a climate of rebelliousness. Such a conscience cannot rely on the blessing of love because, from its point of view, the ties of affection are mere mechanical accidents of fortuitous desires. Pain, that benefactor and conservator of the world, becomes intolerable. Discipline is an anguished prison, and service to others is downright humiliation. The flesh never forgives. It does not know how to be selfless. It is pained whenever it has to yield to anyone, and when it is helpful, it demands from the recipient the subservience of a slave. Wretched are they who live, breathe, and act according to the flesh. The conflicts of possession torment their heart all the time with the force of the untamed life. Woe to them, for the hour of renewal will always ring. If they have fled the atmosphere of immortality, if they have suffocated the best aspirations of their soul, if they have avoided the healthy exercise of suffering, if they have insisted on increasing their appetites and pleasures by complete integration with the inferior side of life, what can they hope for at the end of their physical body except the grave darkness and hopelessness in the cruelty of the night? According to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you will die. That's what Paul says to the Romans, chapter 8, verse 13. And Emmanuel asks a simple question. Are we or are we not people that believe that we are more than the flesh that we have? Are we or are we not more than this body that we have? That's basically what Emmanuel is asking here. But he's going much, much deeper. I'm not going to go into very deep what he said, what he mentioned, but it is very interesting and very, very important for us to really keep things into perspective. Because most of the times, although we say that we are spiritists, although we say that we believe in life after death, although we say that we are spirits, incarnate spirits, that we are spirits and are living in a body, meaning that we are not the body that we are living in, that the body is just a garment, it's just clothes, it's just something that we put on ourselves, on top of what we really are. Most of the time, unfortunately, we don't live believing, really believing this. We live thinking that everything that we suffer here, that anything that we go through here is actually really happening, and that this would be the end of the world. And that's what Paul says. If you believe that you live by the powers of the flesh, you will die. Why? Because if I think that I am just this body, once the body dies, I die. And naturally, Emmanuel is not saying that we will die, because we are spirits. But what he says is, it will be tough for us. It will be harder for us if we keep believing this, because we will lose touch with what we really are. And we are much more than the body that we carry. We are much more than all the troubles that the bodies and people and the flesh and matter give to me. If I really, really believe that that we have a life that is different than just this body that I have right now, I should see life in a completely different way than what we usually do. It's not to say that naturally, oh, I'm not going to suffer if I see it this way. No, it's different. Of course, it's not to remove the suffering. It's not to remove the pain. But the pain is something that if I know how to use it to grow, I will grow with it. It is necessary, or our bodies were created in such a way that the pain that we feel in our bodies is worth, for us, sometimes life or death. For example, if a person has, let's say, a pain in a ear, or a toothache, or a bellyache, but the person doesn't feel it, the person doesn't know that there's something wrong with that part of our body, all of a sudden I can have a bigger problem because I never stopped to take care of that problem. So people who don't feel pain are much more prone to dying quicker than those who feel pain. Why? Because the pain is a signal that something is wrong. So if something is painful in our lives, it means that there is something wrong. It means that I can still feel it, and I need to take some action, not necessarily to remove the pain right away, but to fix what's wrong. Another example that I always think of is, I have a headache, and then I take a pill to remove the headache. But sometimes the problem is not the headache. The headache just tells me that there's something wrong. So if I numb my headache and I don't take care of what's causing my headache, I can have a different problem because I didn't take care of the initial problem, or of the true problem. So the true problem in our lives, it is not our bodies. It is not my flesh. It is not this. My true problem is something that's inside of what I really am, of the spirit that I am, of everything that I sometimes, and most of the times, I need to go through to learn something. It's what Emmanuel wants to say. I highly recommend everyone to take another look at this message, read it very, very carefully, and think about it in our own lives. Chapter 78 of the book, Our Daily Bread. The title of the message is According to the flesh. So this is what Emmanuel wants us to think a little bit about on this message. And as I was saying in the beginning, tonight we're talking about the item number 8 of the book, The Gospel According to Spiritism, on its first chapter. And the title of this part is The Alliance Between Science and Religion. And it is very interesting because this topic that we just read from our daily bread has some connections to what we're going to talk about. It's not a very, let's say, straight connection, but I will probably make a reference to this message that we just read. So I think it will be very interesting that we have read this message before going through this item number 8 here on the Gospel According to Spiritism. So as I was saying, this is one of the covers of the book. There are different editions, different countries, different languages. This is only one of them. So basically everywhere you go, you can find one. You can find one online. If you don't have one, you can just type the Gospel According to Spiritism on your search engine, and you will be able to download the version of the book and read it for yourself, which we always recommend, so we can have a deeper understanding of what we are talking about here. Because this is usually just an introduction to what we can really learn from these books. So why does Kardec decide to talk about the alliance between science and religion in this chapter, right? The first chapter of the Gospel According to Spiritism is I have not come to destroy the law, and in which Kardec talks a little bit about Jesus, about Moses, about, let me just go back so that I don't lose anything that is here. So it is when Jesus says that he didn't come here to destroy what was before him. He came here to fulfill the law. And we discussed what is this law that Jesus was talking about when he was thinking about the law. And naturally, we know that this law that he was talking about is not the law of the man. It's not the law that countries create. It is a bigger, a higher purpose law. And naturally, we understand that when he talks, when he says that he didn't come to destroy the law, he's talking about the law of God. To which Kardec, when he goes and talks a little bit about Moses and about his role when he was incarnated here, and that he received the 10 Commandments, as we know, that it is about that law that Jesus is talking about. It is about the law of God. And then Kardec goes through Moses and then comes to Christ when he says that Jesus came as a second revelation to take what Moses have done, and we know that there were some things that Moses said and Moses did that are connected to his times, connected to when he was here, because of the advancement or the level of civilization that he had under his hands. And depending on where we are, we can and we may apply different laws, we may apply different things to those people. And then once we develop, we will change our laws so that we can regulate better, we can have better laws according to the people that live under the circumstances. So let's say the most famous one, right? A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. If we do this these days, what's going to happen, right? Everybody will be blind and everybody will be toothless, right? Because everybody steals, everybody has problems. So fortunately, it's not necessary anymore to do this. So what we do, we talk to a person and say, hey, why did you do this? Why now you have to repay either with your time in prison, or you have to go and help other people so that you can give back what you took. But nobody needs to take life from you, for example. So laws will change, and that's what Kardec discusses here in the beginning of the chapter when he talks about Moses and he talks about Christ. And then we come to Spiritism, which is not different than what Jesus came to teach us, right? He comes and he just says, well, let me try to open it up a little bit more and explain in deeper meanings what it is. And now that Jesus talked about the spiritual life in a way that he couldn't speak more clearly because of the level of those men and women that were there, now Spiritism comes and says, okay, now we can communicate. Now we can hear spirits. Now we can talk to spirits as they could before, because Jesus talks to spirits. Moses talked to spirits. A lot of the prophets talked to spirits. And it's all there in the Bible. And if you go to different religions, we will all see the same things. But it was something that was more, let's say, hidden to some degree. They didn't know how to do it better. They didn't know how to study it better. So they some of those men and women did it, but they didn't spread it for everybody. Now what happens in around the 1800s, the 1850s, is that those spirits start to come through regular people, not through special people or not through a Moses or to a Jesus, but through regular people like me, like you, like anybody. And they start talking, they start answering questions, they start asking questions, they start telling stuff. Hey, here's how I live. Here's what happened to me after I died. And then that's what Spiritism looks at and say, okay, is this compatible to what Jesus taught? Completely. Because Jesus keeps telling us, hey, if you plant something here, you will sow something here. If you plant a seed of injustice, something bad will happen to you. If you plant a seed of justice, of love, something will happen to you on the other hand. Something better will happen to you on the other hand. So when, right? If some people do, a lot of people do a lot of good stuff and then they die before they get anything good. So when will this happen? And that's what Spiritism comes and says, hey, it's not just here. We are not just this body. And that's what Emmanuel was telling us. We are not just this body. We are much more. If we are going through a problem now, it's not the end of the world, because we are not just what we are thinking at this very moment. Hope and consolation is what we find in Jesus' message, because he came to teach us that, hey, we are worth it. We are more than what we see. We are more than just this physical body. I am more than just this guy here. I am much more. We are much more than this. And that's what Spiritism comes to teach us. But at the time of Allan Kardec, what was happening was science was getting bigger and bigger. And what was happening at the time, and actually started before Kardec, he was a scientist himself. He knew a lot of different types of science. He was an astronomer. He knew geography. He knew mathematics. He knew lots of different languages. He was studying a lot of them, and he had this very, very scientific mind for his time. And he was seeing that a lot of people were complaining and were saying, and especially religion, were saying, well, these scientists are all against what religion is. And a lot of the scientists, because they were seeing what religion was doing, were saying, hey, science is much better than what religion is teaching you. Excuse me. So Kardec was looking at this fight, right, between science and religion. And just a small pause here. Was this happening only at Kardec's time, or is it still happening today? Apparently, it's still happening today, right? We see all the time scientists saying stuff, and then religion goes and says something different, and then they keep fighting because science says this, and religion says this, and oh, you're wrong, and oh, you're wrong, and then keep bickering and bickering each other because of what? And that's what Kardec is talking about here. And he starts by saying that instead of trying to focus on what some people say the bad side of religion, and some people say the bad side of science, he starts in a completely different way. He says, and I'm going to read because I think it is very interesting. Science and religion are the two levers, right? The lever is for you who are not familiar with the term. So a lever is something that, let's say, this book is very heavy. Let's say that this book is very heavy, right? I cannot pick this book up. So if I cannot pick this book up, but if I put something right here, depending on the position where I put this book, I can make a small effort on this side so the book goes up. So a lever is something that we can use to raise something else. So it's something that increases my power to do something. So that's what Kardec is saying here. Science and religion are the two levers of human intelligence. So we can use this lever to increase intelligence in human. One reveals the laws of the material world. Which one it is? Science, right? Science studies the laws of the material world. Oh, how does this phone work? How does this microphone work? How can we write in a piece of paper and the ink does not come out? And what if I want to write in a paper and allow somebody to erase it? I use a pencil. That was created by science. That was created by using the material laws. One reveals the laws of the material world. The other reveals those of the moral world. Two different worlds. One is the world of the moral, of morality, of being an ethical being. And one reveals the side of the material world. These two powers are very important. They are levers of human intelligence. So, see, Kardec is already starting to take some of the weight of what science wants to do and some of the weight of what religion wants to do. He's actually applying a different, let's say, definition to what religion is. It's the moral law. It's what is moral or ethical to do. But religion, to some degree, wants sometimes to control the exterior aspect of stuff. Oh no, I have to put this table right here, because if I don't put this table right here, the spirit will not come and will not communicate. Oh no, I have to put the cross right here, or I have to put the book in this position. This is not what morality is all about. Morality is something that's inside. Maybe the table is better to put here because there's a wind coming from this side, but this is not religion. This is physical, so this is science. But we fight over so many completely different things. And instead of organizing our minds to go through a more scientific approach in some stuff and in a more moral approach in some other stuff, we start fighting and we don't even think about why we are fighting. So Kardec starts to say, look, religion is not or should not be caring about, let's say, some simple things. What kinds of clothes people are using or wearing. What types of cars people are driving. What types of, and whatever, you can think about whatever it is. And science should not be saying that, I don't know, this priest should not say this. Why? Why not? Or this person should not be doing this. Well, you don't think about what will come in the next spiritual life. And you don't think about this. You only think that life is just this, it's just physicality. And if we think, as we were saying before, that life is just here, it's just matter, what does it matter if a person dies or if a person doesn't die? For science, what is the difference for science? There's no difference because science doesn't really care about what is not material. Naturally, it is a little bit different, and I could go a little bit deeper in this because science in the days that Kardec was here was different than what it is today. Because today, although it was already growing there, we had Freud, and then after a little bit there was Jung, and there was a lot of different psychologists or people that would be studying things of the mind, things of psychology. And today we even have the morals or the ethics of science. So today we already started having this conversation between science and religion. But as with anything or everything that's trying to, I wouldn't say merge, but to talk to each other, to converse with each other, there are some people who are way extreme on this side, and there are people who are way extreme on the other side. And although we can have a very nice and very interesting conversation here, sometimes we hear more and we pay more attention to these people who are on the extremes, and this causes us some rejection of the whole group, than to just try to talk a little bit more with those who are trying to have a conversation. So today I see both things. I listen to a lot of stuff throughout my days, and I try to listen to philosophy, science, religion, different religions, different sciences, different philosophies, so that I have a better view or a wider view of what people are talking about in the world. And I see for example, some scientists that when they start talking about religion, they are very dismissive. And so they talk in a very bad tone about religious people. They talk in a very, very disrespectful way sometimes about people in religion. But I also hear, and I also see a lot of scientists who are not necessarily religious people, not saying bad things about religion, and by agreeing that they don't know everything, and that because they don't know everything, they cannot rule out some of the teachings that religions teach us. But on the other hand, I also hear some religious people talking a lot of bad things about science. And saying, oh, science this, science that, and this is, all scientists are atheists, for example. And this is not true. But on the same token, I also hear and see a lot of religious people saying that we need science. We need everything or a lot of things that we have these days. And what we need to really start focusing on is, what is when a person is talking about a religious person is talking bad things about science, what is this person talking about? Is this person talking about a chair, for example? Because this chair could only be here the way it is because of science. All religious people these days, basically, need to have a microphone. And we only have a microphone because there is science. So why do we still keep talking bad things about science? Science is here to help us. But on the other hand, scientists need to understand that we are people, we are a being that is more than just a machine. That is much, much more than just a machine. In that the way we work is not like what science wants us to do. We have a will. We have wishes. We have desires. And we have a way of thinking that is much, much different than any other animal that we have on this planet. We have capabilities that we don't even understand, that science wasn't even able to tap into yet. But because science cannot go and test and put in a lab and really prove that it exists, then it says, oh, this is not possible. Good scientists these days, they believing or not believing, they will say, okay, I cannot prove it and I cannot unprove it. So I'm not going to say that it is wrong, that it doesn't happen. What I can say to be true to what I really believe in science is I don't know yet. So keep doing it until maybe one day we will be able physically, materially, scientifically able to understand and to explain it. Meanwhile, let's see that religion, in this way that Kardec is putting here, helps humans. What doesn't help human is not religion, as Kardec says here. What does not help human is when we start to become fundamentalists, either in science or in religion. And then we cut our ties with science or we cut our ties with religion completely. And we start to put like one is God and one is evil, or one is evil and the other one is God. Or this is the angel and this is the devil. And then we start putting these things like as if everything is black and white and there's nothing in between. Kardec goes to say that we in Spiritism see that these laws have the same principle, which is God. In Spiritism, first topic of all, God is above everything else. Period. God is the creator of everything. All the laws, all of us, everything. So all the laws, if be them material laws or be them moral laws, they are all under the same umbrella, which is God. So if there's something wrong that appears wrong from this side to this side, it's not that they are wrong, they can't talk to each other. It's because we cannot see where they merge or where they touch each other. That's what Kardec says here. He says they cannot contradict each other. So one day, even if we are not seeing it right now, one day we will be able to see how they all are together. And we see this in science. In science, we see this. Some things that happen and that scientists can't explain, they will need to keep going and digging and searching so that they can understand. So let's say Isaac Newton, Galileo, Albert Einstein, they couldn't figure out all the things. So they were doing small research on certain specific topics, while other people were researching other topics. And this appears to be in contrary to what this one is doing. And they start going, and all of a sudden, they find points where those theories touch. And they say, oh, now I understand why it was not looking good. And then they go back, revise, and then go forward. Go back, revise, and go forward. In religion, it should happen the same way. So that we could always go back and revise, always go back and study a little bit more, and confront, compare and contrast with what we know in the world. And when we do this, we can see, okay, now I can understand why this is good and why this is bad. For example, there's a lot of studies on this, but I'm going to cite one person. It's now I will forget his name, but I will remember him while I'm talking, hopefully. There are a few books about this topic, which is, it is good to be good. His first name is Stephen. I'm going to remember the last name in a few minutes. What he says is, and he has this institute to do this kind of research on how doing good to other people is good for me. So, we know this from religion. Every religion that we go will say, do good to other people. No good religion will say, hey, start killing people. Right? That makes no sense. Right? All religions will say that it is important for us to be a good person. It is something that's so natural that it is not something that we even need, or I think we would even need to learn in religion, right? We call it ethics these days, right? It is ethical for us to do good to other people. But what science is proving to us these days is that when we start to do good to other people, to behave better towards other people, to actually get out of my comfort zone to help others, let's say to visit a hospital, to go and check with people that I never met, to go visit an elderly home, to know and see how people are living there and help them, be it for 15 minutes, for 2 minutes, to be there, not to say anything if I can't say anything, but just to be there present. Let's say to paint their nails, to comb their hairs, whatever. That action, those minutes, those moments there, actually create in us physically. He's not even talking about mentally. He's talking about the pleasure and all the glands and all the components of our body that will produce elements that will make me feel better, that will make my body feel better, that will improve my health, not only my mental health, but my physical health. And this is a study that science is doing these days that shows how religion, in the sense that Kardec is teaching us here, is telling us here, where the laws converge. So why do we keep bickering? Why do we keep fighting against each other? Instead of, okay, we can see that there are lots of different things about me and you. I can see that I am blonde, thin, and beautiful, or not, right? And that you are different. I can see the difference. But I can see the similarities too. I am a person. I have feelings. You are a person. You have feelings too. These are two similarities between us. And we can find a lot of other similarities. Why do we focus so much on what is different than to find things that are similar, and based on these similarities, work together to reduce the differences or to understand the differences that we have against each other or that we have one from the other? So it's because, I don't know, people would say, oh, it's human nature, right? Maybe it is, but I see a lot of people that really don't bother with difference. So to say that something is human nature, I would say that it would need to be everybody, but it's not necessarily everybody. And even if it were everybody, we can start doing differently in trying to work together. So what Kardec is saying here is that we can and we have the means to work it out. Before there was science, we would have to believe in what the religious people would say, right? Maybe we ourselves, being religious in a different life, in a past life, being a priest, being whatever it is, and having a power over everybody. Now we would say, do this, and if you disobey, then you can be killed, and so on. But this is not what religion is about. This is what power is about. This is what I want people to do it, and not what God wants me to do, right? So it is very important for us to these days pay attention to what science says. But don't forget that we also need to pay attention to what religion says, to what the moral laws of the world say, and that we have our say in all this, that we have a way of understanding, of going deeper in those teachings and learning more. And so I would repeat this from time to time, and I'm going to repeat it again so that we can reflect upon this, is, oh, but science says this today, 2 days later, science says something different, 3 days later, it goes back to what it had before, and 3 days it will say differently. And that's how science works. Right? A person could have made a mistake, and the person could have forgotten to do a test in the lab, and then throw all this tests out, and then another person comes and say, oh, let me test this again, and then the person said, hey, you forgot this number here, or you forgot this piece here, and then all of a sudden you add something else, and then, hey, this is not completely wrong, this is wrong only on this piece. Isn't this how we work? I'm not a cook, right? But if I'm going to make a chocolate cake, for example, right? Or whatever cake that we want, a cake from Portugal, right? Whatever it is, or to make a bacalhau, right? How much salt do I need to put? How much of this herb do I need to put? How much time do I leave it on the oven? How much time do I leave it out? When, until what day can I eat this? And how do I know this? How do we know it today? We know it because a lot of people before me did it wrong, and then made it better, right? That's how science works. To be a cook is to be a scientist to some degree, right? Because even if you have the best teacher in the world, once you start making it by yourself, we will make mistakes. And we will remember the mistake that I made, and I'll say, oh, last time I did this, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to do it differently. And I'll try it differently, and maybe it will work. Maybe it will not again. And then I'll try it better next time. My wife says this all the time. She said, oh, I'm cooking this today. And then she puts it, we eat, and she asks, oh, is it good? And I said, yeah, it's good. I don't see anything. And she said, it's not good. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. She says it about her own food. And the next time she says, I'm going to try it differently. This time I put 3 eggs. Next time I'm going to put 4 to see how it is. It's testing. Is it wrong? Is it something that we shouldn't do? No, it's the opposite. We should do. That's how we work. So with science, it's the same thing, right? But for a medication, for example, right, to come out, it needs to be tested in a lot of different ways. Let's say an industry comes with a new medicine, right, and then didn't test it properly, and then starts selling this medicine. And comes that, out of 100 people that had the medicine, 10 die. It will be unimaginable what this company will go through. And then people say, oh, so why don't we have this medication already? That's one of the reasons why they don't have it already. Because if you put it out there, who will take responsibility if something goes wrong? So it needs to take time for something to come from 0 to something to go to production. It's just one small example. People would have a lot to say about this, and I'm not discussing about if it's right or wrong. I mean, having medications or not. What I'm discussing is the process of being a scientist is something that takes time. The same way, for me to be a good religious or moral person takes time. Takes a lot of effort. Takes a lot of wrongdoings for me to realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I could have done it differently. Why didn't I do it this way? Oh, next time I'm going to do it differently. So maybe the cake will become a better cake. So maybe my husband, maybe my daughter, maybe me, maybe my boss will feel it differently. Trying different ingredients, trying different things in our lives so that we can work both ways, physically and morally. So the alliance of science and religion is completely necessary because they are under the same umbrella. We have a body, so we need science to work. Can you imagine if we didn't have like Tylenol these days or ibuprofen? If we didn't have penicillin to treat infections, people would die, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 years ago just because they received a cut and they didn't know that they needed the basic things that they needed to do was to get a soap and wash their hands. How did we know that? How did we learn that? Through science. We have a body, so we need that. We need that knowledge. We need that research. We need that type of technology that science gives us. Enables us to think, enables us to live a better life, to make this world physically a better place. But we also need the other side. If I'm going through a difficult situation in my life, mentally, with a relative, with myself, what can science do for me? Can do some stuff. Give me medication. Does it solve the problem or it just uncovers the problem? The solution to those types of problems is not exterior. It's something inside. It's something that I need to go through in myself and say, hey, I need to change something. If we make the dough of a cake, right? If we put the finger before it's ready, right? It will go down, right? Put the finger, it will come all dirty because it will stick in my finger, right? What do we need to do to make this cake ready? Put in the oven. It's going to be hot. It will change something physically in that substance. Once we need to change something inside of me, we need this hate as well. After preparing the dough, after preparing the cake, after that dough is all prepared, what is this moral preparation? Is studying, is reading, is listening, is paying attention. What is to make the cake ready in our lives? Is to say, how do I put this in practice? If we think of the cake, if we think about the cake as a person, and the cake is there in the oven, or almost getting in the oven, we open the door, start putting the cake close to the door. If the cake could talk, what would the cake say?
Too hot.
It's too hot for me. Don't put me there. And then we would say, hey, but if you want to be better than what you are right now, that's what you need to go through. Would the cake say, put me there? I doubt it. If the cake didn't have a conscience, are we better than a cake? I think so. Do we consciously want to be in a position of hardship, of this thing that's really hot, but that will actually change me, that will actually make me be a better cake, that will make me be what needs to be done for that thing to be a cake? We need to go through the hardships. There's no way that we can change for better, for the purpose that we have. Because if I don't put the cake or the dough inside the oven, it will transform. It will get hardened. It will be there. But we won't be able to eat the cake. So we don't need to put it there. We don't need to put it there. It's our choice. What would we do? And that's basically, it's not basically, but Kardec talks a lot about different things here. But once we start seeing that science teaches us a lot of things, and that religion teaches us a lot of things, and that some of these things are actually the same, only saw or only seen through different lenses, through different eyes, there will be no need to separate them anymore. So we can all look at stuff in the material world and take a lesson from it, just like the cake we were discussing, and take it to our inner life. But do we want to do it? Is that what we want to do it or not? This is our choice. This is, in the end, the big question: what do I want to do? I learned a lot of things. We all learned a lot of things. What do we want to do with all those teachings? We want to leave it here in our minds and then leave it forgotten elsewhere? Or do we really want to apply these teachings? Going back to the same example, to the same metaphor. I want to learn how to cook, and then I go to a cooking lesson. Teacher explains me everything, teaches me a lot of things, teaches me about different types of seasoning, different types of ingredients, different types of why the oven needs to be at that temperature or that other temperature. Why do we need to put some stuff, to leave some stuff 20 minutes outside and then put it back? Or why do we need to freeze stuff, and why can't we freeze some other stuff? So the teacher comes and teaches us everything. And then we go cook. And then say, I'm going to throw everything that he said, I'm going to do it my way. We can do it. It's our choice. It's our choice. And unfortunately, apparently, sometimes in religion and in science as well, that's what we want to do. It is as if we don't want to follow at least some basic rules. If we learned, and if we are seeing that although difficult, although hard, this is the best way of going through with this situation, why not follow that situation? And why not follow that path that was taught prior to that? And we saw a lot of different people doing it, maybe suffering, maybe through hardships, but with some good results in the end. Kardec says, so that we can close this talk, and I would invite everybody to read this topic, because I basically developed the whole concept of what we're talking tonight on the first paragraph. There are 5 more, or 1, 2, 3 more. So there are much more stuff here. So I only talked about one paragraph, basically, of what Kardec says here. But I'm going to read one small piece of another paragraph so that we can wrap this conversation. He says that once this relationship between science and religion could be proved by experiments, and I just cited one, right? That religion says that doing good is good for you, and science is proving that already. So he says, once this relationship could be proved by experiments, a new light would begin to shine as faith began to be directed towards reason. Faith and reason together. Then reason, finding nothing illogical in faith, could finally defeat materialism. So when we join the forces of science and religion, we will destroy materialism. And it's not the idea of materialism, only the idea of not knowing that there is another life, but also to start destroying the idea of what Emmanuel was telling us in the beginning, that we are just this body, and that we are just this flesh, and that we should live only for the material things, only for pursuing my career, only for pursuing my house, only for pursuing the material life. No, we need that. We have to pursue that. It is necessary for us to live here. But we also need to start more and more pursuing the spiritual life and the material life. That would be the result of a real alliance between science and between religion, between reason and between faith. So I hope that we, in Spiritism, but outside Spiritism as well, can start working harder and harder to make this connection more possible and to make this connection more real in our lives. So once again, I invite everybody to read item 8 of the first chapter of the Gospel according to Spiritism. Kardec talks much more about this than I was able to say it here. He says it much more beautiful than what I said, but that's what we had for tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming and for listening to this special talk of tonight. And now, as we do it every week and every meeting, if some people that are present here want to receive some passes, there will be people inviting you to receive the passes. And meanwhile, we will put some music here so that we can continue focusing, and at the end I will have some announcements to finish our meeting. Thank you for your patience as always.